To be clear, DEA investigations have shown that Hezbollah is laundering drug money through these financial institutions. In the view and the opinions of members of the Counter Narco-Terrorism Operations Center, Hezbollah is operating like a major drug cartel, and we're going to actively investigate them.
Derek Maltz is a DEA special agent who helped coordinate an investigation going back about 6 years.
Operation Titan was focused on Colombia and a guy named Chakri Harb.
Harb was charged with drug-related crimes. Drugs were allegedly sent via Panama, Venezuela, and Guatemala to the U.S., the Middle East, and Europe. As the investigation progressed, the undercover agent got close enough to the cartel to serve as one of its money launderers. The agent laundered some $20 million, enabling the DEA to follow the money and map out much of the cartel's operations.
Nondescript used car dealerships and export companies in the U.S. Maybe not the first places you'd look for connections to terrorism. But in a new complaint, U.S. law enforcement officials say about 30 American companies are avenues for hundreds of millions of dollars funneled to Hezbollah, a group that's attacked American targets for decades.
Wir stellen vor Hezbollah.
Hezbollah is one of the most sophisticated and complex transnational organized crime groups in the world. The organization generating the proceeds from crime to help support the overall terrorist agenda of the organization. And we started realizing the magnitude of this global network of just money launderers and drug traffickers, and we started looking even closer in Africa. So we eventually saw, working with counterparts on the ground in Africa, we started seeing the collection of drug proceeds and movement of millions and millions of dollars in cash on commercial flights from West African countries like Togo or Benin right into Beirut, Lebanon. And that was pretty fascinating. As a DEA agent for 28 years, I still look back and I just can't believe the magnitude of money that was being moved right into Beirut and put into the money exchange houses to be used for other business around the world. So we started tracking. Once the money was in these exchange houses, we followed the money into banks in Lebanon. Specifically at that time, Lebanese Canadian Bank was one of the banks that surfaced in the investigation, and then monies were moving right back into the U.S. I mean, we put together a task force in the United States with some of the best in the business as far as global money movements and understanding global international business. And we actually had a team with quite a few agencies and lots of expertise to watch the monies flowing around the world from this organization. Multi-country task forces set up, follow the money, shut down the funding streams. Hello, Ambassador. Nice to meet you.
Wonderful.
Good to see you. Terrorists obviously are turning to crime and criminal networks for their funding. The terror groups now recognize the importance of the criminal activity. There's billions of dollars. I mean, look at drug trafficking alone. I mean, the UN estimates about $400 billion being generated from drug business around the world. So the terrorists are smart. They're tapping into these funding streams. What we did was we consolidated all the DEA investigations around the globe, looking at the money laundering activities and the drug traffic activities of Hezbollah. So these Hezbollah operatives are actually overseeing all the illicit finance and the drug trafficking activities, not just in Europe, but in South America, the tri-border region, moving about $200 million a month. So the main route that we identified was from South America, whether it's Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, right into West Africa. And then the drugs would be transported up through Northern Africa into Europe. And we also had like mass amounts of cocaine leaving the tri-border region of South America with simple courier operations, you know, a couple of kilos, 10 kilos in a suitcase, just with mass amount of people just landing in airports all over Europe. And we also had containers going into Belgium, into Germany, other ports throughout Europe. If you look at the port in Belgium, 41 metric tons of cocaine being seized. Just in Germany, as an example, last year, 7 metric tons of cocaine seized in Hamburg. They'll take the proceeds from the drug trafficking, they'll go out, they'll buy used cars, they'll buy luxury watches and jewelry, ship that stuff back into Lebanon to sell. Once it's sold, they can pay the drug traffickers back in South America. So it was a trade-based money laundering scheme generating millions and millions of dollars to help support these radical terrorists like Hezbollah.
Noradin erhält seine Anweisungen von Abdallah Safieddin, dem Gesandten der Hisbollah in Teheran. Im Rahmen ist er auch für die Koordination der globalen terroristischen Aktivität gegenüber General Qasem Soleimani verantwortlich, dem Leiter der Al-Quds-Truppe, der iranischen Revolutionsgarden. Tatsächlich diente er als Leiter der Hisbollah-Einheit, die sich für die Geldwäsche von Drogengeldern und für den Erwerb von Waffen für den militärischen Arm verantwortlich zeichnet. Kraft seiner leitenden Position berichtet er direkt an seinen Onkel, kein geringerer als der Generalsekretär der Organisation, Hassan Nasrallah.
We started seeing volumes and volumes of money in West Africa being collected by Lebanese couriers and then transported in suitcases on commercial flights right back to Lebanon. And then we started seeing like millions of dollars coming from Lebanon to corresponding accounts in the United States. And we couldn't figure out, at first, it was kind of like, what is all this money being used for in the US? Like, what are they doing? And started realizing that they were helping fund these used car dealerships all over the United States to buy cars, send the cars back to West Africa to resell, to make more money. So all that money was like commingled and then sent back through the cycle into Lebanon, right through the exchange houses, to the banks, to the correspondent accounts, and the whole scheme just kind of grew.
The cars imported from the US were sent to one of the biggest car lots in town. The car lots in the United States, one linked to a separate Hezbollah weapons smuggling scheme, were not moving nearly enough merchandise to account for all that cash. What was really going on was that European drug proceeds were being intermingled with the car sale cash to make it appear legitimate.
It was all part of a drug and money laundering network U.S. officials say was spearheaded by a Lebanese national named Ayman Juma, now under indictment in America. The new complaint seeks forfeiture of more than $480 million, including all the assets from the U.S.-based companies.
Juma was part of a very large money laundering and narcotics trafficking ring that supplied cocaine to, among other people, the Los Zetas Mexican drug cartels. And he also laundered money from the drug proceeds back to the Colombian suppliers of cocaine. Hezbollah received its cut either from the exchange houses or via the bank itself. Today, the same networks are still active.
Experts say Hezbollah is relying more and more on criminal enterprises for its funding.
The Iranian regime continues to fuel conflict, terror, and turmoil throughout the Middle East and beyond.
But meanwhile, Hezbollah continues to adapt to the changing international drug market.
The Justice Department announcing today it is creating a task force to take a fresh look at drug trafficking and money laundering operations linked to the terror group Hezbollah.
I'm very thankful for the Attorney General's leadership. I'm very excited. I look forward to seeing the results. The key to this whole thing for success is what's the objective of the task force? What are the resources? Who's going to be involved? And is there going to be directives from the top about cooperating and sharing between crime and terror cases?